My name is Beth Mitchell, and I'm coming to you from Restorative Healing and Wellness Center in Tampa, Florida. At a young age, and there were some people in my life who influenced me greatly. My father was one who always taught me that I should follow my dreams and do what I love no matter what. One day I had asked him, well, what if I go to medical school and I end up deciding I hate it? And he said, who cares? It'll still be a great experience, and if you decide you didn't love it and you find something else, then it'll be no problem. Keep going. And then there were influences I had in my upbringing at church, and I can remember one day asking the priest about becoming a doctor and having that conversation, and the priest said, well, do you want to be a treater or do you want to be a healer? And kind of intimated that he himself was a healer and in the healing business. And what did I think about that? And it really got me thinking. And at that time I was on an awakening journey where those kinds of questions were on my mind. And that made sense to me, that finding ways to really help the body restore its own innate intelligence so that it can recover from any of the stressors that life brings us. And then I also had a friend who was similarly a big influence in my life, and she guided me quite a bit as we together trained together in the wellness industry. So I went on to become a physician and chose a training path in medicine originally that was quite traditional in internal medicine and infectious diseases, and was working in the area of research with HIV and STDs and that kind of thing. And that job eventually brought me to working in a jail. And I was the medical director at this jail for about 16 years. And during that experience, working with people who were at the absolute worst point in their lives, looking for answers and ways of seeking freedom and improvement from health and emotional imbalances and other things, between that and my own personal journey, which was filled with a lot of life stressors and illness for myself and my family, I began seeking answers elsewhere, because the traditional path I had been given did not have all the answers that I was seeking. And after a tragedy occurred in my life with a close friend who I had trained with in medicine, she transitioned unexpectedly, and she was my go-to for a lot of things because she had already been building a holistic wellness practice. And so something positive that came out of that tragedy was that she started guiding me in ways I didn't even know was possible. And I ended up creating my own wellness center and opening it in a little over 3 years ago. And part of the name of my center incorporates part of the name that her center was before she transitioned. So I first discovered NES Health during this journey that I was, an awakening I was experiencing, where I was seeking alternatives to traditional medicine. And I was on YouTube one day looking for something, and somehow, not sure how, Peter Fraser popped into my search engine, and I started listening to something he was talking about with NES Health and Infoceuticals, and I was initially drawn into it, I must admit, because my mother's maiden name was Fraser, and she was always teaching me about the Fraser clan. And I started listening to him talking about the body field and energy flow and meridians and acupuncture medicine, and the way he was pulling together all the different sciences and integrating them into one foundation was something I was already seeking, because I knew that there were aspects of biology and chemistry and biochemistry and all of these different scientific fields I had learned and was operating in, physiology and chemistry, and how did they all come together with acupuncture medicine and that kind of thinking to explain how the body field's working. And that's how I got drawn in. So in the beginning, when I was first learning NES Health and what the Infoceuticals were all about, understanding more about the body field, I was using the Infoceuticals myself and naturally was offering them to some family members, one of whom was my former spouse at the time, and he was a big skeptic. And so I really wanted to see how he would do and what he thought about it. And he also was very environmentally sensitive to all kinds of things. And so I wanted to see how they would behave if he took them. So he agreed to do his scan, which is almost effortless. And as long as it didn't require much from him, he was willing to do it. And because I put the Infoceuticals in front of him based on his scan and gave them to him and told him what to do, he was willing to do it. And it was late in the day when he first took them. And I kind of warned him, you might want to start slow and low. And he might want to start in the morning because they might give him energy. And he said, well, these are just water, so I'm just going to take a dropper full of each and it'll be fine. So I kind of snickered and let him do it because I knew he'd be fine either way. And he ended up, he was awake all night or most of the night. And the next morning he said to me, these things work. Because he was so energized, he couldn't believe it. So he ended up taking them for a year after that. And for that year, he did nothing else in essence because he was tired of a lot of the other treatments that he had been doing. And since that was all his choice to do it that way, but since that was the only thing he did that year, and then he ended up not going into the hospital for any reason. And before that, he'd been in the hospital every 3 or 4 months with this recurring problem that was associated with a lot of pain and a lot of abnormalities with his pulse and his nervous system. And after not being in the hospital for a year, he said to me one day, I honestly cannot attribute anything to my health improvement except these water drops, because he wasn't doing very much with his diet and he wasn't making any other radical changes in his life at that time. So for me, that was a big testimony that I was on the right track with using NES Health. My number one tip for practitioners is that they need to find what works for them, that resonates as the highest truth for them and for humanity. And to do that means they have to be centered themselves. They have to have their own flowing energy meridians with their own healing journey. If they don't, what happens is a lot of healers, in my opinion, are, as I was, imbalanced solar plexus, imbalanced stomach spleen, and therefore we're nurturing everybody else except ourselves. And I think right now more than ever, it's a time where us as healers are learning the importance of self-care and self-care first. And that's one of the biggest things I would teach and do teach practitioners working with me, or we won't have what it takes to help others. My vision for the world now is all of us coming together as one, working toward this idea of unity consciousness. And what that means is we, especially as healers, need to come together more as one group where we can spark within each other this own inner knowledge, this inner compass, this inner knowing that we all have about who we are and why we're here. So that together we start opening up each other's gifts. And these, I feel, are God-given gifts that we have, and we're here now for a specific reason in a very historical time to help bring unity among all people together. And in doing so, we start healing one another, and we start integrating that physical body with the mental body and the emotional body and the spiritual body, and finding ways together using all of our modalities, whether it's light or sound or quantum healing with water, like these Infoceuticals, so that we can start reprogramming the body and the cells and the water within the body with those unity type messages. And in that way, we start healing ourselves, healing one another, and bringing about a world that is more peaceful and more in line with an evolving earth and an evolving humanity that is able to sustain the stressors that surround us every day.